Hello everyone and welcome to the American Civil War Gaming Club's YouTube channel. This is part 5 in the Meeting Engagement at Resaca custom multiplayer double-blind game. There are 106 turns in this battle, and we are just about 1/5 of the way through it. We are utilizing WDS's Campaign Atlanta for this scenario. If you haven't already checked out WDS's website or explored their Civil War games, definitely take a moment to do so. The link to their site is down in the description below. I'm going to start with a quick recap of the previous turns in this game. Alright, that brings us up to date. We are on turn number 19. And I'm actually going to do a quick flyover of the battlefield so we can actually get in there and take a look at all the units on the actual battlefield map. So to begin with, I'm going to zoom in on the southern portion of the map down here. And this is where we can find Hardee's Corps, which has one division on the map already. The other division is not too far behind them. Altogether, he's going to have just over 13,000 men. But they have a long way to march to get up to Resaca and the actual battlefield further north than that. Shifting northward on the map here, we're going to go up to the Resaca area. And you can see that the town and the objectives that the Federals are aiming for are located there. And you can also see one of Stuart's two divisions. Altogether, Stuart has just under 14,000 men. This division has marched up from the south. They started towards Resaca, and then they were counter-marched back to the west, and now they're moving up north through Snake Creek Gap right there. We're going to shift northward on the map a little bit more here, so you can see the main part of this battlefield so far. Here we have Snake Creek Gap down on the bottom left, and then Dug Gap all along Rocky Face Ridge. We also have the town of Dalton, which is sort of a no man's land right now, but the Federals will very soon occupy it. General Hood's Corps is over on the left. He has Hyman's division in Snake Creek Gap, and Stevenson's division in Dug Gap on the right flank. Meanwhile, behind Hyman is Stuart's other division. They are just now arriving in this area here. Meanwhile, to the north, Claiborne's Corps is on the right flank of the Confederate forces. He has Granbury's division on his left and Walker's division on his right. Altogether, Claiborne has just over 14,000 men. For the Federals, General Thomas's Corps has just under 21,000 men, and they are highly concentrated over near Dug Gap. Reinforcing Thomas is Wood's division from Howard's Corps, and Wood has 7,000 men of his own, and they are going to join on the attack on Dug Gap. In the north, McPherson has just over 18,000 men. He is confronting Claiborne's Corps. And then the other two divisions of Howard's Corps are moving around to the Union left flank, and they are going to start southwards towards Resaca and to break the Confederate right. Altogether, on that flank, Howard has just over 13,000 men. Shifting your focus down to the bottom left-hand side of the map, you can see that arrow there. That represents what Stuart's current orders are. He is to move to the left and, if possible, either counterattack the Federals to relieve pressure on Dug Gap, or defend if the Federals attack south. Really, this is just a chaotic battlefield right now, as both sides have concentrated on opposite flanks. The Confederates are putting the bulk of their forces in Snake Creek Gap, while the Federals are putting the bulk of their forces over by Dalton. It's going to be pretty crazy here over the next few hours. All right, we're going to shift a little bit more to the north here, just so you can see that we do have Hooker's Corps beginning to arrive from the north. And they don't have far to march to get into this battle, as opposed to Hardee's Corps that we saw earlier on the extreme southern part of this map. Hooker is going to bring just under 19,000 men into this battle. The Federals are really beginning to concentrate their forces here around the Dalton and Dug Gap area. All right, well, let's zoom back out here and let's get back to the turns as we're playing them. And we are at turn number 19 in the game. It is 10:40 a.m. And we're going to rotate now to turn number 20. You'll see the units shift there slightly on the map. And there was a renewed assault on Dug Gap by Thomas, with Wood's division moving in support. And with all this activity going on by Dug Gap, the Confederates called another command meeting, which is surprising. I mean, why would you have another command meeting literally one turn after your last command meeting? Well, we'll talk about that soon. So to begin the command meeting, General Johnston wrote that, "Why are the Yankees not attacking south into Snake Creek Gap? I believe we are very lucky there, as the enemy has 3 corps stacked in the west against Hindman." Well, why another command conference? Well, it's pretty obvious. The rebels continue to overestimate Thomas's forces. Thomas has 1 corps and he's been reinforced by a division of another. There are not 3 corps stacked up opposite Snake Creek Gap, but the Confederates continue to believe this, and that's what they're basing their plans on. Now, General Stuart, he's beginning to question whether or not this is really a good plan. I am wondering why this big of a fight this far west. We are committed to it now, but maybe it is not too late to just make a feint west and stay in Snake Creek Gap. Stuart, you will remember, tried to move towards Resaca, but had his orders countermanded and was told to move to the west. Presumably, Stuart is concerned that Claiborne is too weak in the east and that they've stacked up too many of their forces over in the west. General Johnston replied that the Yankees have 3 corps in the west right now. If we can keep the Yankees divided on either side of the mountains, they cannot use their larger numbers effectively against us. Now, stepping back for a moment, the Confederates know the Federals have about 80,000 men on this map somewhere. Therefore, with 4 Federal corps on this map, that would mean Johnston believes there are 60,000 Federals over by Dug Gap and north of Snake Creek Gap. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The Confederates have all the high ground, and they can practically count each and every Federal regiment down in that valley. Simply by adding them up, they should be able to come to the conclusion there's only about 20 to 25,000 Federals in that area. And yet they continue to believe that there is a much, much larger force there than there actually is. And General Hood, he's drinking that same Kool-Aid. I'd love to see Stuart head west and then advance north to engage the enemy. I will also pull Stevenson back to protect Dug Gap if possible. So General Hood, the same as General Johnston, believes that the main battle here is going to take place opposite Dug Gap, and that there's going to be a major fight over in that area on the far western edge of this battlefield map. So my quick commentary here. To be honest, I am really confused. I really am. I'm very seldom at a loss when it comes to explaining what the two sides are doing and why they're doing it, but I am legitimately confused by the Confederate plans right now. General Stuart arguably sees the battle more clearly than anybody else right now, and he senses something is amiss in the West. But Johnston and Hood remain convinced that the Federals have a much larger force, and that's what they're basing all of their plans on. And as I said, it's odd because the Confederates occupy all the high ground, and they can see practically everything west of Rocky Face Ridge. There's just not that many Federals out there, but they believe that there are. Not only that, but I'm also confused by Stevenson's movements. Stevenson's division is located right here within Dug Gap, and it is the key to the northern half of this battlefield. But Stevenson's division is spread far too thin to even think about stopping an attack by over 20,000 Federals. Again, this should be obvious to General Stevenson looking out over the battlefield. He knows how many men he has, he knows how thin his line is, and he knows how many Federals are moving towards him, and yet he has stayed in place far longer than he really should have. Stevenson's division is seriously going to be in a lot of trouble in a very short period of time. Lastly, Cleburne's right flank is very weak, and the Rebs are betting that Hardee can march north all the way from the southern edge of this map fast enough to somehow bolster Cleburne's forces before the Yankees break through and march for Resaca. That is ludicrous, to be honest. I don't understand what they see that I'm not seeing. Again, I'm just really confused here. And in this battle so far, it just feels like the Confederates are gambling with each and every move they make. And they're gambling that the Federals are going to make the worst possible move. But they haven't made any poor moves so far. They're playing a very tight game, and they're making intelligent decision after intelligent decision, and nothing the Confederates have done so far has paid off for them. So at some point, they're going to have to step back and realize they need to rethink everything that they're doing. But let's carry on. Turn number 21 in this game, and as I predicted, Thomas's attacks on Dug Gap are growing, and Stevenson is stretched too thin to even try to stop him. Thomas was able to launch some melees, they were all successful, and Stevenson is being driven back. Moving forward to turn number 22 in the game, 11:40 a.m., and this is an incredibly important turn, as we'll cover over the next few minutes. Howard's forces over on the left flank of the Federal Army are now moving rapidly to hit the enemy right flank. Howard milled about for a few turns, he bulked up his forces, and now he's moving in mass south, and he's bringing everyone with him. The Confederates got unlucky, they had some routed units on their extreme right flank, and that's going to force the rebels to spread their lines even further over on Cleburne's right. They are already really thin, and they just got a little bit more thin. Over on the opposite flank, at Dug Gap, Thomas and Wood are also moving as quickly as they can to strike Stevenson's men, as they are also stretched to the breaking point. Wood's 7,000 men are now all engaged, and they're moving right towards Stevenson's line. All he has is a brigade stretched out to try and slow down an entire Federal division. I think we all know how that will turn out. And more rebel units have routed on Stevenson's line, as the Federals once more successfully meleeed into them. The Federals have all the momentum and the numbers on their side. And not only that, there's a lot more Federals on the way. This is just the first wave of Federals hitting Stevenson's men. There are waves even behind them. So let's actually zoom in on that part of the map. You can see what I'm talking about. The Confederates have about 4,600 men with Stevenson's division. He has an additional 2,000 men to the south, but they are out of place and not actually within Dug Gap. Thomas has over 20,500 men. Most of them at this point are moving to the northeast towards Dug Gap and are striking the Confederate units. Meanwhile, Wood has 7,000 men. They are massed and they are moving towards Dug Gap rapidly, and they're also trying to outflank the Confederates and forcing them to spread their line again and again. These highly concentrated Federal attacks are moving to strike the rebels and finally take Dug Gap once and for all. The Federals are fed up with it. They want that road. Stevenson should have fallen back hours ago when he had the chance, when everything was quiet on this part of the battlefield. He didn't. He stuck around. He's trying to protect Cleburne's left flank, but the longer he stays here, the worse it's going to get for him. He has no hope of holding, and he also can't easily escape as the Federals are now right on top of his lines. So he can't retreat in an organized manner. He can flee the battlefield, but he also can't stay and defend any longer. This is a very bad spot to be in. If you're going to retreat, you want to do so on your own terms, not on the enemy's terms. But Stevenson doesn't have that luxury anymore. He needs to get out of Dug Gap as quickly as he possibly can. But so far, he's shown no inclination to do just that. And shocking as it may seem, the Confederates have used a fourth command meeting. They just had their third 2 turns ago. It has gotten so bad that Johnston was forced to quickly meet with Stuart and use his 4th command meeting of the day. He only has 1 left, and it's not even noon. So the Confederates, they are desperately trying to grasp what is going on here, and now they're going to have to start changing their plans. So Johnston has met with General Stuart, and the first thing Johnston said was, "This battle is moving fast, so fast that it is hard to keep up. What was once clear to me has clouded over, and a different realization has popped up. For me to ignore it would be to risk losing the battle." Johnston is owning up. He has realized everything he thought about this battle might just be incorrect. "Had I listened to you 40 minutes ago, we would be in a better situation. But hindsight won't get me anywhere. Any commander who doesn't react to what can plainly be seen isn't much of a commander. It is plain to me that we need to reverse course. You are to move your 2nd Division back to Resaca, retracing your line of march to the east. Your other division will remain on Hyman's left and continue to block Snake Creek Gap. I do not know how long Claiborne can hold, as we must defend Resaca or the battle is lost. Move as quickly as possible." General Stuart replied that, "I agree that the situation is critical, and I also agree with your current orders. I will move as quickly as possible to Resaca with 1 division and protect the left flank of the army with the other." All right, my commentary here. Johnston has made the right decision, but is it too late? Johnston took a number of hours, and he used up 4 of his 5 command meetings, and most of those command meetings achieved very little. He kept reinforcing the idea that the Federals were bulking up over opposite Snake Creek Gap, and that was just never true at all. And so everything that the Confederates were fighting towards, everything that they were planning, all really just got flushed during the last command meeting between Stuart and Johnston. They are now going to have to rethink their plans. But Johnston only has 1 command meeting left, and Claiborne and Hood are still operating under the assumption that they're going to make a major push over in the far west. So the Confederates are really going to be in a tough battle now, where their generals are working towards different purposes, and there's no real overall plan right now. Claiborne and Hood are going to have to think on their feet and react to what's going on around them and to what they think that the army needs to do. Will they be able to do that? We're going to find out. Now, down here we have Stuart's 2nd Division. This is the division that was at Resaca, marched back to the west, and now they're marching back to Resaca. So they've gone over some of this ground 3 times. Stuart's division will reach Resaca in plenty of time. There's no problem there. The Federals cannot reach it before the Confederates. But Claiborne remains shockingly oblivious to the threat on both of his flanks. With Dug Gap collapsing and his right flank being shattered by Howard, really, you would think Claiborne would be a little bit more concerned and would begin falling back with his forces as quickly as possible to escape to the south and out of this trap that is slowly closing around him. But Claiborne's guns are still unlimbered, and he's fighting over every inch of ground like it's the most important part of the battlefield. He only has 1 road here to retreat on. And with only 1 road and 20,000 Confederates moving towards it, this could be a disaster if the Federals are able to reach that road either with Howard or with Thomas, or if they are able to unlimber guns and control the movement on that road. Claiborne needs to realize that and get to the south immediately. All right, well, this is actually a good place to stop. We've only covered a few turns, but there's been a whole lot of action behind the scenes. Moving forward, how many men will Stevenson actually lose in Dug Gap? Is he going to continue to stubbornly hold as long as possible there? At what point will he realize that he needs to get out with as many men as possible because they're going to be needed later in this battle if the Confederates still have any hope of winning this fight? Also, what impact will Howard's offensive have on Claiborne's right flank? It's already beginning to rout, and there's a lot of pressure against it. Once Howard gets rolling, he's going to be very hard to stop. Really, the biggest concern for the rebels right now should be this. I'm going to pull up the map here, and if you're looking for more Confederates, that's it. There are no reserves, there are no reinforcements anywhere near this area. This is all the Confederates there are. Johnston does have just under 27,000 men, which on paper, that's quite a few men, obviously. But they are spread out for miles, they have very few roads, and they are on very tough ground. Not only that, but Sherman has over 59,000 men just in this area here confronting them. And to make it even more difficult for the Confederates, Hooker is on the way with 20,000 more men for Sherman's force. This is really the best case scenario for General Sherman. And as I talked about before with General Claiborne and my belief that he's not moving quickly enough to escape this trap, look at what could possibly happen here. If Dug Gap falls, and if General Howard's force over on the Federal left flank sweeps around the Confederates and begins to move towards that one remaining road, which I'm actually going to call the Crossroads because I feel like that's going to be a key part of this battle. If the Federals sweep around, Claiborne's forces are cut off, and he's going to lose thousands of men if he's not careful. The Confederates need to escape this area as quickly as possible. They have to ingloriously fly. They have to just run as fast as they can possibly run. But I don't know if they see it yet, and I don't know if they're willing to do that. Well, guess what? We're going to watch, and we're going to find out. And if you've enjoyed this video and you're like, man, this looks like a lot of fun, I want to get involved with these guys, come check us out at the American Civil War Gaming Club. Our website is located at ACWGC.net. Tune in for the next episode. I have a hunch there's going to be a heck of a lot of action coming up. Until that time, just remember, keep gaming.